My grandson called me late in the night. "Grandma, I'm at the police station. My stepmother hit me, but she's saying that I attacked her. My dad doesn't believe me." When I arrived at the station, the officer turned pale and muttered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." It was 2:47 a.m. when my phone shattered the silence of my home. At that hour, no call ever brings good news. Never. I reached out in the dark, fumbling on the nightstand until I found the cell phone. The screen illuminated my face with that cold glare that abruptly brings you back to reality. It was Ethan, my grandson, the only one who still called me Grandma without anyone forcing him to. Ethan. My son. What happened? My voice was hoarse with sleep, but my heart was already pounding as if it knew something was terribly wrong. What I heard on the other end chilled my blood. "Grandma." His voice was shaking, broken by sobs. "I'm at the police station, Chelsea. She hit me with a candlestick." My eyebrow is bleeding, but she's saying that I attacked her, that I pushed her down the stairs. My dad believes her. Grandma, he doesn't believe me. I felt the air leave my lungs. I sat up in bed barefoot on the cold floor. Ethan's words ricocheted in my head like stray bullets. Chelsea, my son's wife, the woman who in 5 years had achieved what I thought was impossible, turning Rob into a stranger. Calm down, my boy. Which police station are you at, the one in Greenwich Village? Grandma, I'm scared. There's an officer who says if a responsible adult doesn't come, they're going to transfer me to... Don't say another word. I interrupted him, already standing searching for my clothes with trembling hands. I'm on my way. Don't talk to anyone until I get there. Did you understand me? Yes, Grandma. He hung up and I stood there in the middle of my room, holding the phone as if it were the only real thing in that moment. My reflection in the closet mirror stared back at me. A woman of 68 years with disheveled gray hair and deep circles under her eyes. But I didn't see a frightened old lady. I saw Commander Elelenina Stone, the same woman who had worked in criminal investigations for 35 years, the same one who had interrogated criminals, solved impossible cases, and faced situations that would make anyone tremble. And for the first time in 8 years since my retirement, I felt that woman awaken again. I dressed in less than 5 minutes, black slacks, gray sweater, my comfortable boots. I grabbed my purse and almost by instinct opened the drawer of my dresser. There it was, my expired commander badge. I put it in my back pants pocket. I didn't know if it would help, but something told me I was going to need it tonight. When I stepped outside, the city was shrouded in that thick silence that only exists in the early hours of the morning. I stopped a taxi on the main avenue. The driver, a man in his 50s, looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Where to?" "Mom, Greenwich Village Precinct, and hurry please, it's an emergency." He nodded and sped up. I stared out the window without really seeing anything. I only thought about Ethan, his broken voice, the words he had told me. My dad doesn't believe me. Rob, my son, the boy I had raised alone after his father abandoned us when he was just 3 years old. The man to whom I gave everything education, values unconditional love. The same one who 5 years ago had stopped visiting me, who had stopped calling me, who had erased me from his life as if I had never existed. And all because of her, because of Chelsea. He met her at a casino where she worked as a dealer. He had just become a widower hour, devastated by the death of his first wife, Ethan's mother. Chelsea appeared like a saving angel, young, beautiful, attentive too. Perfect. I saw it from the beginning. I saw the way she looked at him, not with love, but with calculation, like someone evaluating an investment. But Rob was blind. He needed to fill the void left by his wife's death. And Chelsea knew exactly how to fill it. Slowly, she began planting doubts in his head. Your mother is too controlling, honey. She never lets you make your own decisions. She's always judging you. At first, Rob defended me, but drops of poison, when they fall one after the other, end up poisoning even the purest water. Visits became spaced out. Calls became shorter. Birthdays were forgotten. Christmases came with invented excuses, until one day he simply stopped reaching out to me. The only one who kept coming was Ethan. The weekends he was supposed to stay with his father. He would find a way to sneak away for a few hours to visit me. He brought me drawings from school. He told me his problems. He hugged me as if in my arms he found the refuge he no longer had in his own house. And I, like the fool I was, thought that things would eventually get better. That Rob would come to his senses, that time would make him return. How wrong I was. The taxi stopped in front of the precinct, a gray 2-story building with the lights on. I paid the driver and got out. My legs were shaking not from fear, but from contained rage. I entered through the main door. The desk officer, a young man about 25 years old, looked up from his desk. "Good evening. How can I help you? I'm here for Ethan Stone, my grandson. He called me half an hour ago." The officer checked a sheet in front of him. "Ah, yes. The domestic assault case. Are you his grandmother? Lillian Stone." Something had changed in his face when he heard my name. He turned slightly pale. He looked at me more closely as if trying to remember something. Stone. Like Commander Stone. I took out my expired badge from my pocket and placed it on the desk. The officer took it, looked at it, and his expression changed completely. He stood up immediately. "My God, Commander, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were family. Allow me. Where's my grandson?" My voice came out firm without hesitation. The voice I had used hundreds of times to interrogate to order to make people understand that I was not playing games. In the waiting room with his parents, and well with the complainant. "Captain Spencer is in charge of the case." Spencer. That name made me pause for a second. Charles Spencer. He had been one of my subordinates years ago. A good officer, fair intelligent. "Take me to him." The officer nodded and led me down a hallway that I knew like the back of my hand. I had walked these same floors hundreds of times during my career. Every corner, every door, every crack in the wall brought back memories of a life I thought I had left behind. But that night, I understood something. You never stopped being who you were. You just pretend you've forgotten. We arrived at the waiting room, and there, in that cold space illuminated by fluorescent lights, I saw the scene that would change everything. Ethan was sitting on a plastic chair, his right eyebrow clumsily bandaged with gauze. His eyes were red from crying so much. When he saw me, he jumped up. "Grandma." He ran towards me and hugged my waist as he did when he was a child. I felt his body tremble against mine. I stroked his hair and whispered, "I'm here, my boy. I'm here." But my gaze had already found the other 2 characters in that scene. Rob was standing by the wall, arms crossed and jaw clenched. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Shame, anger, guilt. And next to him, sitting with her legs crossed and a perfectly rehearsed victim expression, was Chelsea. She wore a wine-colored satin robe as if she had been dragged out of bed. She had a bruise on her left arm that looked freshly made. Her brown hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders. She looked at me with those big, teary eyes as if to say, "Look what your grandson did to me." But I knew that look. I had seen it in dozens of criminals who tried to fool me during my career. The look of someone who knows how to act, of someone who knows how to manipulate. "Alelina," Rob said with a dry voice without moving from his spot. "You didn't have to come." Those 5 words hurt me more than any physical blow. I didn't have time to respond because at that moment an office door opened and a man in his 50s came out in an impeccable uniform and a serious expression. Captain Charles Spencer. When he saw me, he stopped short. "Commander Stone." "Hello, Charles," I said calmly. "It's been a while." He approached clearly surprised. "No, I didn't know you were involved in this case. If I had known now, you know I interrupted him. And I need you to explain exactly what's going on here because something told me that what I had heard on the phone was only the tip of the iceberg, and I was about to discover how deep the abyss my family had fallen into was. If you want to know how a grandmother everyone had forgotten became the worst nightmare of the person who tried to destroy her family, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because this story is just beginning. Charles Spencer took me to his office. Ethan came with me, clinging to my hand as if he feared I would disappear. Rob and Chelsea stayed in the waiting room. I could feel my son's gaze fixed on my back, but I didn't turn around. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Spencer's office was small but tidy. A metal desk, 2 chairs in front of it, a filing cabinet in the corner, and a crucifix on the wall. Not much had changed since my time. Even the smell of old coffee and paper was the same. "Sit down, please," Spencer said, closing the door behind us. I sat in one of the chairs and Ethan settled next to me. His gaze was lowered, his hands clasped in his lap. Spencer sat on the other side of the desk and opened a folder. He sighed before speaking. "Commander, the situation is complicated." "Explain the facts to me," I said without beating around the bush. "Her version first." Spencer nodded and consulted his notes. Ms. Chelsea Brooks filed the complaint at 11:43 p.m. She arrived accompanied by her husband, Mr. Robert Stone, your son. She alleges that approximately at 10:30 p.m., the minor Ethan returned home after his permitted time. When she reprimanded him, he reacted violently, pushed her down the stairs, and hit her arm. She has bruises that partially match her story. Every word was like a needle sticking into my chest. I looked at Ethan. His head was still bowed, but I saw his hands trembling. "And my grandson's version?" I asked, although from Spencer's tone, I already knew that no one had believed him. "The minor alleges that Ms. Brooks was the one who assaulted him first. He says that when he arrived home, she was already angry that she waited for him in the living room, and without saying a word, hit him with a blunt object. According to him, a silver candlestick. The wound on his eyebrow required 3 stitches. Did you check for the candlestick?" Spencer shook his head uncomfortable. "Ms. Brooks says that such an object doesn't exist, that the boy invented that story to justify his aggression. And here comes the problem, Commander. The house security cameras were broken that night, just that night." I leaned back in the chair processing the information. It wasn't a coincidence. None of this was. "How convenient, right?" I murmured. Spencer looked at me with that expression I knew well. The look of someone who knows something is not right but doesn't have enough evidence to act. The cameras had been broken for 3 days. According to the husband, they were going to call the technician this week. What about the neighbors' cameras? The street cameras. We are in the process of reviewing them, but the house is in a private residential area. There are no public cameras nearby. Of course not. Chelsea had planned this perfectly. Every detail, every move. This wasn't a fit of anger. It was premeditated. I turned to Ethan, put my hand over his. "Look at me, son." He slowly looked up. His eyes were full of fear and shame. "Tell me everything from the beginning. And don't hide anything from me." Ethan swallowed. He looked at Spencer, then at me again. I was late because I stayed studying at a friend's house. I have a math test on Monday. I got there at 10:15 p.m. Not that late. But when I opened the door, Chelsea was there in the living room with the lights off. Only the kitchen light was on. His voice began to crack, but he continued. She said, "You're late, you insolent brat." I told her I had texted my dad. She laughed and showed me my dad's phone. She had it. My dad was asleep. Then she said, "Your father doesn't care about you. Nobody cares about you. You're an annoyance in this house." Tears started rolling down his cheeks. "I just wanted to go up to my room, Grandma. I swear to you, but she grabbed my arm and pulled me. I tried to break free, and then she took the candlestick from the table and hit me here." He pointed to his bandaged eyebrow. I felt everything spin. I fell to the floor. And while I was lying there bleeding, she gave herself the bruises by hitting herself against the wall. I saw her grandma. I saw her do it. "Where was your father, asleep in his room?" She had given him some chamomile tea because he said he was stressed. When he heard the noise and came downstairs, everything was already set up. Chelsea was crying, saying I had attacked her. My dad didn't even ask me. He just yelled at me that I was a disgrace and called the police. I closed my eyes for a moment. I took a deep breath. The rage I felt was like a fire contained in my chest. And the candlestick. She hid it before my dad came down. I don't know where she put it. I opened my eyes and looked directly at Spencer. "Charles, you knew my work for 20 years. Did you ever see me let an innocent person pay for something they didn't do?" "Never, Commander. My grandson is telling the truth and I'm going to prove it." Spencer rubbed his face with both hands. "Elena. Legally, my hands are tied. It's the word of a minor against that of 2 adults. The father supports the wife's version. I don't have physical evidence to contradict their story. The only thing I can do is let him go under your temporary custody while the investigation proceeds. but I need you to sign as the responsible party. Do it. I'll take responsibility." Spencer took out some papers and began filling them out. Meanwhile, I watched Ethan. That boy had grown so much in the last year. He was already 16, almost a man. But at that moment, huddled in that chair with a broken eyebrow and swollen eyes, he was once again the 7-year-old boy who cried in my arms when his mother died. "How long has this been going on, Ethan?" I asked in a low voice. He looked down again. "What, Grandma?" "Don't ask me that question. You know what I'm referring to." There was a long silence. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Ethan spoke so softly that I barely heard him for 6 months. It started with insults. Then she started breaking my things, my video game console, my notebooks. "A soccer trophy you gave me. She said they were accidents." My dad believed her. Then she started hitting me. Slap schvies. Once she locked me in the basement all afternoon because I said I wanted to come see you. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I was afraid that if I told you, my dad would be more angry with you. I thought that if I put up with it a little longer, things would get better." But today was different. I saw something in her eyes. "Grandma." I realized that she wants me to disappear. She wants to push me away from you. She wants you to see me as a problem. She wants my dad to see me that way too. Spencer finished filling out the papers and handed them to me. I signed them without reading, trusting him. Then he stood up. "I'm going to call your son to also sign the release of the minor. Wait here." He left the office. Ethan and I were left alone. I hugged him this time even tighter. I felt his body relax against mine as if for the first time in hours he could breathe easy. "Forgive me, my boy. Forgive me for not realizing sooner. It's not your fault, Grandma. It's my dad who didn't want to see." He was right. But that didn't make it hurt any less. The door opened. Rob entered alone. He didn't even look at me. He walked up to the desk, took the pen Spencer extended to him, and signed the papers with quick, jerky movements, as if every second in there was hurting him. "That's it?" he said dryly. "Can I go, Rob?" I said, standing up. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to talk about with you," he replied without turning around. "You made your choice. You chose to believe him instead of my wife. Your wife. What about your son? When did your own son stop mattering to you?" He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes chilled my blood. There was no love. There was no guilt. There was just nothing. A void I didn't recognize. My son attacked my wife. The evidence is there. Chelsea has the bruises. He has a history of bad behavior at school. What history? Ethan exploded. "That's a lie. I've never had problems at school. You were suspended last week for fighting with a classmate because that classmate was bothering a girl. He was harassing her and I defended her." The principal congratulated me after speaking with the witnesses. Rob didn't answer. He simply turned around and left the office, closing the door with a loud bang. I stood there, feeling every piece of hope I had of getting my son back crumble. Spencer put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Nina." "Don't be sorry," I replied, wiping away a tear that had escaped without permission. He made his choice. "Now I'm going to make mine." I took Ethan's hand. "Let's go home." We left the precinct into the cold early morning. Chelsea and Rob had already left. On the empty street, under the orange glow of the streetlights, I stopped for a moment. Ethan looked at me. "What are we going to do, Grandma?" I looked into his eyes, those eyes that so resembled his mother's. Good, noble, incapable of lying. "We are going to prove the truth, my boy, and we are going to make her pay for every tear she made you shed because Chelsea made a mistake tonight. A mistake that would cost her everything. She messed with my grandson, and no one, absolutely no one hurts my family without me doing something about it." Commander Alelina Stone was back. And this time, there was no retirement that could stop me. What secret was Chelsea hiding? Why so much hatred towards an innocent boy? The truth was darker than I imagined. We arrived at my house when the sun was barely beginning to peek out between the buildings. Ethan walked silently beside me, dragging his feet from fatigue and pain. I lived in a modest apartment in Greenwich Village, a third floor without an elevator that I had bought with my life savings. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every memory on those walls belonged to me. I opened the door and turned on the lights. The familiar smell of coffee and cinnamon greeted me. I always left a stick of cinnamon on the stove so the house would smell like home. "Come sit on the couch," I said to Ethan. "I'm going to make you something to eat." "I'm not hungry, Grandma." "I didn't ask if you were hungry. I said I'm going to make you something." He managed a weak smile and collapsed onto the brown fabric sofa. It was old but comfortable. I had bought it at a second-hand market 15 years ago, and it still held up. I went to the kitchen and heated milk. I prepared 2 cups of hot chocolate the way my mother taught me when I was a girl. I cut a piece of the chocolate chip cookie I had bought the day before at the local bakery 2 blocks away. I returned to the living room with everything on a tray. Ethan took the cup in his hands and took a sip. He closed his eyes, savoring it. For a moment, he seemed to forget everything that had happened. "Thank you, Grandma. Eat slowly. Then I'll give you something for the pain in your eyebrow." I sat beside him and drank my chocolate in silence. Outside, the city was beginning to wake up. You could hear the first trucks, the whistle of the man selling bagels on the corner, the barking of the neighbor's dog on the second floor, Grandma. Ethan said after a while, "Can I stay with you?" "Of course, for as long as you need." "No, I mean forever. I don't want to go back to that house, not with her there." I placed my cup on the coffee table and looked at him. "Ethan, legally, your father has custody. I can only have you temporarily until the case is resolved. If you want to stay with me permanently, we'll have to do things properly with lawyers, with judges. But my dad will never agree. We don't know until we try." He shook his head. "He does everything Chelsea tells him. Since they got married, it's like my dad is a different person." "Do you know what I heard a week ago?" "What did you hear?" Ethan lowered his voice as if someone could hear us. "They were in their room. I was going to the bathroom and passed their door. It was slightly ajar. Chelsea was talking on the phone with someone. She was saying, 'Don't worry, everything is going according to plan. When the old lady dies, Rob will inherit the house. We'll sell it and get at least $4,500,000. With that and what I've already saved, we'll go to Miami. We'll open the hotel we always dreamed of. And the kid will send him to a military boarding school in San Diego. Let someone else deal with him.'" I felt the blood boil inside me. "Are you sure of what you heard?" "Completely sure, Grandma. That's why that night when I came home late and she attacked me, I knew it was part of her plan. She wants to push me away from you. She wants you to see me as a problem. She wants my dad to see me that way too. And when I'm no longer in the way, all that's left is to wait for you." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Chelsea was planning my death. Or at least she was waiting for me to die soon. And in the meantime, she was going to destroy any bond that existed between my son and me, between Ethan and his father. "Did you say anything to your father?" I tried. The next day when Chelsea went to the hair salon, I told him what I had heard. Do you know what he told me? That I was making things up because I couldn't accept that he moved on with his life, that I was a resentful teenager, that Chelsea had been very patient with me, and that I was just making her look bad. The helplessness I felt in that moment was crushing. My own son, the boy I had raised to be fair and honest, was completely blinded. "You are not making anything up, Ethan, and I believe you every word." He leaned his head on my shoulder and sighed. "Why does she hate us so much, Grandma?" "Because the hatred of people like Chelsea doesn't come from the heart. It comes from ambition. For her, you and I are obstacles, things that stand between her and what she wants. And what does she want? Money, power, and easy life without working for it." I fell silent, thinking. I started putting the pieces together. When Rob met Chelsea, she told him she came from a wealthy family in Dallas, that she had attended private schools, that she worked as a dealer at the casino because she liked the excitement, not out of necessity. But we never met her family. No relative ever came to the wedding. When I asked Rob about it, he said Chelsea was estranged from her parents due to personal problems. How convenient. "Ethan, I need you to do me a favor." "Anything, Grandma. Take out your phone. Show me the photos of the bruises you said you had from before." He took his cell phone out of his pocket, unlocked the screen, and opened his gallery. He showed me a hidden folder in his files. There were at least 20 photos. Bruises on his arms, on his back, on his legs. All recent, all dated. Why did you never show me this? Because I was afraid that if I did something, my dad would blame you. Chelsea always says that you are turning me against them. Send me all those photos now. Ethan obeyed. My phone started vibrating as the images arrived. Every photo was proof. Every mark was a silent cry for help that no one had heard until now. Now I need you to sleep a little. I told him your eyebrow is swollen and you need to rest. Use my room. I'll stay here on the couch. But Grandma, no buts. Go to sleep. He got up, kissed me on the forehead, and went to my room. I heard him close the door softly. I was left alone in the living room with my cell phone in my hand and the photos of my bruised grandson filling the screen. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a drawer of the living room cabinet and took out an old leather-bound notebook. It was my investigation notebook, the same one I used when I was on active duty. Inside were phone numbers, contacts notes from old cases. I looked for a specific name, Linda Davis. Linda had been my partner for 10 years in criminal investigations. She was younger than me, but just as tenacious. When I retired, she continued working for a couple more years until she opened her own private investigation agency. We had seen each other a few times since then, but I knew that if anyone could help me, it was her. I dialed her number. It rang 4 times before she answered. Hello? Her hoarse voice sounded sleepy. Linda, it's Eleanina Stone. There was a silence, then a sigh. Commander, I haven't heard from you in ages. What time is it? 6:30 a.m. I'm sorry to wake you, but I need your help. It's urgent. Tell me. I told her everything from Ethan's call to what I had heard about Chelsea's plans. I told her about the photos, the bruises, the precinct, about Rob. When I finished, Linda let out a long whistle. That woman is a professional commander. What you're describing to me isn't a cruel stepmother. It's a con artist and a good one. That's what I thought. I need to investigate her. Full name, date of birth, everything you have. Chelsea Brooks. I don't know her middle name. She's 32 years old. According to what Rob told me when he met her, they got married 5 years ago. That's enough for me. Give me 2 days. I'll check her background. Previous marriages, financial history. If she has a past to hide, I'll find it. Thank you, Linda. Don't thank me yet. This is going to take work. And if we find something big, we're going to need more than good intentions to act. I know, but first I need to know what we're dealing with. We hung up. I kept looking at my phone. Then I looked around my small living room. The old furniture, the photos on the walls, the crucifix over the entrance. This house was not worth $4,500,000. It was worth much more. It was worth every drop of sweat I had shed working double shifts to buy it. It was worth every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment of loneliness. And Chelsea thought she could just take it away from me. She thought she could manipulate my son, torture my grandson, and wait for my death like someone waiting for a check. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was tinged with orange and pink. A new day was beginning, and with it my battle. Because Chelsea didn't know something. She didn't know that I wasn't a defenseless old woman waiting to die. I was Elena Stone, former commander of criminal investigations, a woman who had faced drug traffickers, murderers, and criminals of all kinds, and none of them had managed to defeat me. Chelsea had just declared a war, and I was going to make sure she lost it. The investigation was just beginning, and what I discovered about Chelsea made me realize that my grandson and I were not her first victims. 2 days later, Linda appeared at my door at 9 a.m. She carried a thick folder under her arm and an expression I knew very well, the look of someone who had just uncovered something rotten. Commander, you need to sit down before I show you this. I made coffee while Ethan was in the shower. He had spent those 2 days with me recovering. The swelling on his eyebrow had gone down, but the scar would remain forever, a permanent mark of Chelsea's cruelty. We sat at the dining table. Linda opened the folder and began taking out documents, photographs, screen prints. Chelsea Brooks started as Vanessa Jimenez Ruiz in Houston, Texas. 34 years old, not 32 as she told your son. First lie confirmed. She never attended private schools. She finished high school at a public school, and there is no record of her setting foot in any university. She worked as a waitress, a promoter, and eventually as a dealer in several casinos across the country. Linda placed a photo on the table. It was Chelsea, but younger, maybe 23 or 24 years old. She was with an older man about 60 years old at what looked like a wedding. Her first marriage. She married Richard Miller at 24, owner of a chain of hardware stores in San Diego. A widower with 2 adult children. The marriage lasted 2 years. Richard died of a heart attack. Chelsea inherited a property valued at $2,800,000. The children tried to contest the will, but they couldn't. Everything was legal. The children, what happened to them? One lives in New York. The other, the younger daughter, filed a complaint against Chelsea for threats but withdrew it a week later. When I tracked her down by phone and asked her about it, she hung up. I called her back and she said, "Word for word, that woman is dangerous. I don't want to know anything about her or her cursed money." I felt a chill run down my spine. Linda put down another photo, another wedding. Chelsea with another older man. Second marriage, Franklin Adams, a textile businessman in Dallas, 58 years old, also a widower. They married when Chelsea was 27. The marriage lasted just a year and a half. Franklin suffered a fall at home that left him in a coma. He died 3 weeks later. Chelsea sold the house and the business. Estimated profit $3,200,000. Did anyone investigate the fall? Yes, but they didn't find anything suspicious. Chelsea said Franklin had been drinking that night and slipped on the stairs. There were no witnesses. The house security cameras were broken. I looked up abruptly. Broken? The same as at your son's house now, Commander? Same pattern. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Is there more? Linda nodded and pulled out a third set of documents. Third marriage. Joseph Vega, a retired civil engineer in San Diego, 62 years old, widower. They married when Chelsea was 30. This marriage ended differently. Joseph didn't die, but his son, Paul Vega, 26 years old, disappeared 6 months after the wedding. Disappeared literally. He left his house one night and never returned. He left a text message for his father saying he needed time to think that he was going abroad. He hasn't been heard from in 4 years. Joseph tried to search for him but eventually gave up. He fell into severe depression and signed documents giving Chelsea legal power over his finances. She admitted him to a nursing home and sold all his properties. Estimated gain $4 million. I put my hands to my face. This was worse than I had imagined. That boy, Paul, do you think I don't know what happened to him, Commander? But the pattern is clear. Chelsea looks for older men widowers with children. She marries them, and one way or another, those children end up out of the picture, dead, disappeared, or intimidated. Then she keeps the money. And now she's with my son. Rob fits the profile perfectly. Young widower with a teenage son and with a mother who has a property in her name. She can't touch you directly while you're alive, but she can make your son inherit and then manipulate him into selling. That's why she wants to push Ethan away. I said, understanding everything, because Ethan is an obstacle. He's the legitimate heir if something happened to Rob, and he's smart enough to see her for what she really is. Exactly. And that's why she's making him look like a delinquent. If she manages to get him admitted to a correctional facility or legally banished by his father, the path is clear. Linda pulled out another document. There's more. Chelsea has an accomplice. His name is Gerald Hayes, a lawyer. He appeared in the 3 previous marriages. He takes care of the legal part. Will's powers of attorney, property sales. He splits the profits with Chelsea. 50-50. Do you have proof of that? Suspicious bank transfers always after each inheritance? Large amounts divided into accounts in the Cayman Islands. It's not definitive proof for a judge, but it's enough to start a formal investigation. I heard the bathroom door open. Ethan came out with wet hair and the clean clothes I had loaned him. When he saw Linda, he stopped. Good morning. Good morning, Ethan. I'm Linda, your grandmother's friend. He nodded and approached shyly. He saw the documents on the table. Is that about Chelsea? I looked at Linda. She nodded slightly. I decided Ethan deserved to know the truth. Sit down, son. I told him everything. Every marriage, every suspicious death, every disappearance. I watched his face turn pale with every word. When I finished, his hands were trembling. So she killed those people. We don't know for sure, Linda said. But the pattern is too consistent to be a coincidence, and I'm... Next, Ethan whispered. She wants me to disappear like Paul. That's not going to happen, I said firmly, taking his hand, because now we know who she is and we are going to stop her. How? Ethan asked. My dad won't believe us. He thinks you just want to separate them. I don't need your father to believe me. I need evidence. Evidence that neither he nor any judge can ignore. Linda leaned back in her chair. Commander, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that Chelsea is smart, but not as smart as she thinks. She made a mistake by attacking Ethan that night. She became overconfident. She thought that her word and the fake bruises would be enough, but she left loose ends. Like with the candlestick. Ethan says she hid it. It has to be somewhere in that house with Chelsea's fingerprints and probably with Ethan's blood. That is physical evidence, but we can't go in to look for it without a warrant. I smiled slightly. No, but Ethan can. Legally, that house is still his home. He has the right to be there and retrieve his things. Ethan looked at me with wide eyes. You want me to go back? Only for a couple of hours with a pretext. You say you need your clothes, your school supplies, and while you're there, you look for the candlestick, but you're not going alone? What do you mean I'm not? I took out my phone and searched for something in an application. Then I showed the screen to Linda. Spy cameras button size. They can be sewn into clothing. They transmit a real-time video to a cell phone. Linda smiled. Commander, you haven't lost your touch. I never lost it. It was just dormant. We spent the rest of the morning planning every detail. Linda would get the spy cameras. I would call Rob to ask him to let Ethan pick up his things. And while Ethan was inside, we would be outside recording every second. But there was a risk. If Chelsea suspected anything, she could act. She could hurt Ethan again or worse. Grandma. Ethan said, reading my concern, I want to do it. I have to do it. Not just for me, also for Paul, for the other children, for everyone she hurt. I looked into his eyes. He was no longer the frightened boy of 2 nights ago. There was something different in him. Determination, courage. All right, but we follow my plan to the letter. No improvisations. If you feel you are in danger, you leave immediately. Understood. Understood. That afternoon, I called Rob. He answered on the 3rd ring. What do you want, Mom? Ethan needs his clothes and school supplies. He's going to go pick them up tomorrow. I hope there's no problem. There was a long silence. Is he going alone? Yes. It's his house too, isn't it? Or at least that's what you used to say. Fine, but tell him to be quick. Chelsea doesn't want to see him. Don't worry, it will be very quick. I hung up before he could reply. Linda arrived that night with the cameras. They were so small, they looked like normal buttons. We sewed them into Ethan's shirt, one on the chest and one on the shoulder. From my phone, we could see everything the cameras captured. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., I said, Chelsea will be home because she doesn't work Tuesdays. Rob will be at the office. It's the perfect time. Ethan nodded. He seemed calm, but I saw his hands trembling slightly while he ate dinner. That night before sleeping, I went into his room. He was lying down looking at the ceiling. Can't sleep. I'm scared, Grandma, but not of Chelsea. I'm scared of what I'm going to find, of confirming that my dad is with a killer. I sat on the edge of the bed and stroked his hair. Whatever we find tomorrow, we'll face it together. You're not alone, Ethan, and you never will be, as long as I'm alive. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, my boy, more than words can say. He closed his eyes and eventually fell asleep. I stayed there a little longer, watching him breathe peacefully. I thought about all the dangers he would face the next day, all the things that could go wrong. But I also thought about something else, that Chelsea had underestimated this family. She had underestimated a brave boy who refused to be another victim, and she had underestimated a grandmother who had hunted criminals all her life. Tomorrow, the serpent would show its fangs, but we already had the antidote. The next day, Ethan entered that house with the cameras rolling. What we recorded that afternoon chilled our blood, and it gave us the weapon we needed to destroy Chelsea. It was 2:45 p.m. Ethan was standing in front of the mirror in my living room, checking his shirt. The buttons with the hidden cameras were invisible to the naked eye. I checked for the 10th time that the transmission was working correctly on my phone. "Clear audio, clear video," I said. "Are you ready?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Ready." Linda was outside in her car half a block from Rob's house. We would be the backup. If something went wrong, we would go in immediately. "Remember," I said, putting my hands on his shoulders. "You go and say hello, normally go to your room, pack your clothes. Meanwhile, you observe. If you see the candlestick or any other evidence, you record it, but don't touch it. We don't want her to accuse you of stealing anything." "Understood. And if she gets aggressive, I leave immediately." I gave him a strong hug. He smelled of soap and fear, but also of courage. "Let's go," Linda said from the doorway. "It's time." We went down to Linda's car. I sat in the back seat with my phone in my hands, the screen showing what Ethan's cameras saw. Linda drove in silence, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. We arrived at the Upper East Side. Rob's house was large, 2 stories with a front yard and an electric gate. He had bought it with the life insurance money from his first wife, a house that should have been full of happy memories. But now it was a prison. Ethan got out of the car. We watched him walk toward the front door. On my phone, the image moved with every step he took. He rang the bell. The door opened. And there was Chelsea. She wore black athletic pants and a tight pink blouse. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Without makeup, she looked younger but also more calculating. Her eyes scanned Ethan up and down like a predator evaluating its prey. "You showed up," she said with a flat voice. "I thought you'd chicken out." "I came for my things. My dad said I could." "Your dad says a lot of things. Come in, but hurry. I don't have all day." Ethan entered. The camera captured everything. The elegantly decorated living room, the marble floor, the paintings on the walls, everything impeccable, everything perfect, a facade. "Go to your room. You have 30 minutes. Chelsea ordered, closing the door behind him. Ethan went up the stairs. The camera recorded every detail. He reached his room and opened the door. My heart broke, seeing what the cameras showed. The room was completely trashed. Ethan's clothes scattered on the floor, his posters ripped from the walls, his desk overturned, books strewn everywhere, his bed stripped of sheets, as if a hurricane had passed through there. "My God," Linda whispered, watching the screen in the rearview mirror. I heard Ethan's shaky voice through the audio. "What happened to my room?" Chelsea's voice came from downstairs, yelling, "You packed up your mess like the pig you are. That's why your room is like that." Ethan began picking up his clothes and putting them into a backpack. His hands were shaking. The camera captured him pausing in front of a broken photo on the floor. It was a picture of him with his mother taken a year before she died. The frame was in pieces. The photo had a shoe print on it. I watched Ethan carefully pick it up, wipe off the dust, and put it in his backpack. "Breathe, son," I whispered, though I knew he couldn't hear me. "Breathe." He finished packing his clothes. Then he opened his desk drawer looking for his notebooks. That's when I saw it. On my phone screen behind a pile of broken notebooks, something shone. "Stop," I said into the phone. "Focus on that," as if he had heard me. Ethan moved the notebooks, and there it was, a silver candlestick, heavy antique with dark spots at the base. Blood. He found it, Linda said. "That's it," Chelsea's voice interrupted from the stairs. "Are you done?" "You've been up there for 15 minutes. Almost," Ethan replied, his voice surprisingly calm. Quickly, with trembling hands, he took out his personal phone and snapped several pictures of the candlestick. Then he left it exactly where it was and closed the drawer. "Well done," I murmured. Ethan left his room with the backpack on his shoulder. He started down the stairs. Chelsea was waiting for him at the bottom, arms crossed. "Is that all?" "Yes." "Perfect. Then you can leave and not come back. This is my house too." Chelsea let out a cold laugh. "Your house." "This house belongs to your father, And I am his wife. You are just an accident he had to put up with all these years. My mom wasn't an accident. Chelsea's eyes narrowed dangerously. Your mother is dead and your grandmother will be soon too. It's a matter of time. Old women like her don't last long. And when she dies, your father is going to inherit that filthy house where she lives. We're going to sell it. We're going to move away. And you're going to stay in a boarding school where you learn not to be so insolent. Is that why you hit defenseless kids? Because it makes you feel powerful? Chelsea took a step towards him. The camera perfectly captured her face. Pure fury. I didn't touch you, you lying brat. You attacked me, and if you repeat that lie again, I'll make sure you rot in a juvenile facility. I know the truth, and my grandmother does too. Your grandmother is nobody. She's a washed-up old lady who doesn't know when to give up. But she'll learn. Everyone learns eventually. At that moment, we heard another voice. A voice that made my world stop. What are you two talking about? Rob had just entered through the front door. He wore his office suit, his tie loose. He looked tired, old, nothing like the son I remembered. Honey, Chelsea said, immediately changing her tone to one of sweetness and concern. You're home early? Ethan was just leaving. Rob looked at his son, then at Chelsea. Something in his expression told me he had heard more than she thought. What was that about a boarding school? I was just explaining to him that if he continues to misbehave, well, have to take measures. Chelsea replied quickly. She said that when Grandma dies, they were going to sell her house. Ethan set his voice firm. Despite his fear, she said it word for word. That's a lie, Chelsea exclaimed. Rob, honey, your son is making things up again to turn you against me. I'm not making anything up and you know it. Rob ran his hands over his face. He looked like a man on the verge of collapse. Ethan, go now. Dad, you need to listen to me. I said go. The scream echoed throughout the house. Ethan took a step back, hurt. I squeezed my phone so hard I thought I would break it. All right, Ethan said in a low voice. I'm going, but when you want to know the truth, you know where to find me. He left the house. The door closed behind him. On the screen, we could still see Rob and Chelsea in the living room. She approached him. She placed her hands on his chest. Honey, you're stressed. That kid is making you sick. We should. I need to be alone. Rob interrupted her, pulling away. He walked up the stairs without saying anything else. Chelsea stayed there, looking at her cell phone with a smile that chilled my blood. She dialed a number. Gerald, it's me. We have to speed things up. The brat is causing problems. Yes, I know. Give me one more week and everything will be ready. The old lady won't know what hit her. She hung up, and at that moment, I knew we didn't have much time. Ethan arrived at the car. He got into the back with me. His eyes were full of tears he refused to shed. I'm sorry, Grandma. I tried. Don't apologize, I said, hugging him. You did perfectly. We got what we needed. Linda started the car and we drove away from there. On my phone, I reviewed the recordings. We had everything. The candlestick, Chelsea's threats, her confession about selling my house, her call with Gerald. But more importantly, I had something that broke my heart. The confirmation that my son was lost. That night after Ethan fell asleep, I went out onto the balcony of my apartment. The city glowed under the streetlights. It was cold. Or maybe it was just my heart that felt frozen. I thought about Rob when he was a child, how he would run to me every time I came home from work, how he would hug me and say, Mom, I missed you all day, the nights I spent awake when he had a fever, the times I defended him when other kids made fun of him for not having a father. I gave everything for that child, everything. And for what? For a woman to arrive and steal him from me in less than 5 years. For him to look at me as if I were his enemy. The tears I had contained for days finally came out. I cried silently so Ethan wouldn't hear me. I cried for the son I lost, for the years I would never get back, for the words I would never hear from his mouth again. But I also cried out of rage because Chelsea hadn't just taken my son. She had turned him into a stranger. She had poisoned him against me, against his own son, against everything that was once good in him. And I couldn't forgive that. I dried my tears. I took a deep breath. And in that moment, I made a decision. I was going to get my son back. I didn't know how. I didn't know how long it would take, but I was going to rip him from that woman's clutches, even if it was the last thing I did in this life, because I was Ellen Stone and mothers like me don't give up. Never. Even when the whole world is against us, even when our own children have forgotten us, we don't give up. But before I got my son back, I had to destroy Chelsea. And for that, I needed more than just recordings. I needed a perfect trap. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. No more tears, no more doubts, just one objective. Destroy Chelsea Brooks before she destroyed what little was left of my family. I brewed strong coffee and sat at the dining table with my old investigation notebook. Linda would arrive in an hour. Ethan was still sleeping. He needed that rest after yesterday. I started writing down everything we knew. Physical evidence, candlestick with Ethan's blood. At Rob's house, we cannot touch it without a court order. Testimonial evidence, recording of Chelsea threatening talking about selling my house, mentioning Gerald. Background, 3 previous marriages, 2 suspicious deaths, 1 disappearance, millions of dollars inherited. Accomplice Gerald Hayes' lawyer handles the legal part of the scams, but something bothered me. All of that was circumstantial. A good lawyer could dismantle our case by saying the recordings were taken out of context, that the previous marriages proved nothing, that we were a resentful grandmother inventing stories. I needed more. I needed Chelsea to incriminate herself so clearly that not even the best lawyer could save her. Linda arrived promptly at 8. She brought 2 extra coffees and a look like she hadn't slept well. "What do you have in mind, Commander?" I know that expression. "It's the same one you wore when we were about to solve a difficult case." I smiled slightly. "We're going to set a trap for Chelsea. But for that, I need her to believe I'm vulnerable, that I'm defeated. How I'm going to do something that goes against every instinct I have? I'm going to give her exactly what she wants." Linda frowned. "I don't follow you." I took an envelope from my bag. Inside were documents I had prepared the night before while I couldn't sleep. Documents for the voluntary transfer of my property in Rob's name, signed by me. Linda's eyes widened. "Commander, you can't be serious. They're not real." "Well, the documents are real, but they have a hidden clause in fine print that automatically invalidates them if coercion, threat, or fraud is proven. A notary friend helped me prepare them last night. They look legitimate, but legally they are worth nothing if there's pressure involved. And how are you going to make Chelsea bite the bait?" "I'm going to contact her. I'm going to tell her I'm tired of fighting, that I want peace, that I'm willing to sign my house over to Rob if she leaves Ethan alone. But with one condition. I want her and her lawyer to come to my house personally to close the deal. And while they are here, I record them. Everything, every word, every threat, every confession that slips out, because people like Chelsea can't resist boasting when they think they've won." Linda leaned back in the chair. "Processing the plan. It's risky. If she realizes the trap, she could become violent. That's why you are going to be here, hidden in my room. And I'll have hidden cameras throughout the living room and dining room. Professional quality audio and video. All legal, because it's my house and I have the right to record what happens inside it. And what if she accepts the documents and simply leaves without saying anything incriminating?" "She won't. I know women like her. When they think they've won, they can't resist the temptation to rub it in your face. They will want me to know that they defeated me. And in that moment, they will drop their guard." Ethan came out of the room at that moment, disheveled and with swollen eyes. Seeing us, he stopped. "What's going on?" I explained the plan to him. I watched his face go from fear to concern and finally to determination. "What do I do?" "You stay at Linda's house that day. I don't want you here when they come. It's too dangerous." "But, Grandma," "It's not negotiable, Ethan. I need to know you are safe so I can concentrate on this." He didn't argue further. He knew that when I used that tone, there was no turning back. We spent the rest of the day preparing everything. Linda got 4 professional spy cameras. We installed them in strategic locations. One in the living room bookshelf, another in the dining room wall clock, a third on the kitchen shelf, and the last one in my floor lamp. From the room. Linda could see and record everything on her laptop. I also prepared my house to look vulnerable. I left hospital bills on the dining table, fake ones prepared by Linda. I put medicine bottles in the kitchen. I wanted Chelsea to think I was sick, weak, desperate. The next morning I picked up my phone. My hands were shaking slightly as I dialed Rob's number. He answered on the fourth ring. "What do you want now, Mom? I need to speak with Chelsea. It's important." Silence. Then the sound of footsteps. Rob passed the phone to his wife. "Elena." Chelsea's voice sounded cautious, almost amused. "What a surprise. We need to talk about the house, about Ethan, about everything. We have nothing to talk about." "Please." I let my voice sound tired, defeated. "I'm tired of fighting. I just want my grandson to be safe and my son to be happy. If that means giving in, then that's what I'll do." There was a long silence. I could imagine Chelsea smiling on the other end. "Giving in what sense exactly?" "The house. I know Rob will eventually inherit it, but I've been sick lately. My heart isn't well. The doctors say it could be a matter of months, maybe a year. I don't want to die knowing I left a legal problem for my son." "How thoughtful of you." The sarcasm in her voice was evident. "I am willing to sign documents transferring the property to Rob's name now, but with one condition: that you leave Ethan alone, that you drop the charges, that you allow him to live with me for the rest of my life." Another silence. I could hear voices in the background. Chelsea was consulting with someone, probably Gerald. "When do you want to do this?" "Tomorrow, 3:00 p.m. at my house. Bring your lawyer if you want. I want everything to be legal and final." "Why the sudden change of heart, Elena?" "Because I'm tired. Because I no longer have the strength to fight. And because at the end of the day, my son chose and he didn't choose me." Those last words hurt to say because they were true. "Tomorrow at 3, then Chelsea said, "And I hope you're not playing games with me, old lady, because if you are, I promise you'll regret it." "I'm not playing games. I just want peace." She hung up. I was left staring at the phone, my heart pounding furiously. Linda placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did very well, Commander. You sounded convincing." "It's because part of it is true," I admitted. "I am tired, and Rob did choose her over me. But we are not going to let her win. No, we are going to make sure she loses everything." We spent the rest of the day going over every detail of the plan. Where would I sit? Where would they sit? What questions to ask to make them talk, how to subtly provoke them so they felt secure in themselves. That night before sleeping, I went into Ethan's room. He was lying down looking at the ceiling. "Nervous, Grandma." "A little, but more than nervous. I'm angry." "And that anger is what's going to give me strength tomorrow." "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing is going to go wrong. Trust me." He sat up in bed and hugged me. "I always trust you, Grandma. You're the strongest person I know. And you are the reason I keep fighting." The next day, Linda came early. We checked the cameras one last time. Everything was working perfectly. At 1:00 p.m., we took Ethan to Linda's house. Her husband, a quiet and reliable man, stayed with him. "Do not leave the house for any reason," I told Ethan, "and keep your phone on." "Be careful, Grandma." "I always am." Linda and I returned to my apartment. She set up in my room with her laptop, headphones, and a professional recorder. I stayed in the living room waiting. At 2:55, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath. I stood up. I smoothed my gray blouse and dark skirt. I had chosen clothes that made me look older, more fragile. I opened the door. There they were. Chelsea in a beige office dress and high heels. Beside her, a man in his 50s, impeccable suit briefcase in hand. Gerald Hayes, no doubt. And behind them, with an uncomfortable expression, was Rob. "Come in," I said softly. "I was expecting you." Chelsea entered first, looking at my house with barely disguised contempt. Gerald followed her, evaluating everything with a lawyer's eyes. Rob entered last without looking me in the eyes. "Sit down, please." I gestured to the couch and dining chairs. Chelsea sat on the main armchair as if she owned the place. Gerald next to her. Rob on a separate chair as if wanting to disappear. I sat across from them, and in that moment with the cameras recording every second the final game began. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I know this isn't easy for any of us. Chelsea smiled. That predator's smile I had seen so many times on criminals who thought they had won. Elelenina. I always knew you'd eventually see reason. And so it began. The trap was set. The poison was served. Now it only remained to see if the serpent was arrogant enough to drink it. What Chelsea and her accomplice said that afternoon, believing they had won, sealed their fate. Every word was a confession. Every smile, more evidence of their guilt. Gerald Hayes opened his briefcase and took out a folder of documents. He placed them on the coffee table with precise, calculated movements. He was a man of measured gestures with slicked-back hair and gold-rimmed glasses that probably cost more than my 3 months' rent. "Mrs. Stone," he began in a professional voice, "I understand that you wish to transfer the property located at Greenwich Village 247 Apartment 302 to your son Robert Stone's name. Is that correct?" "That's right," I replied, keeping my voice tired, resigned. "Excellent. I have prepared the necessary documents. I just need you to review them and sign here, here, and here." He pointed to several lines with his expensive pen. I took the papers. I pretended to read them carefully. In reality, I was observing everyone's reactions. Rob looked at the floor uncomfortable. Chelsea couldn't hide the gleam of triumph in her eyes. Gerald maintained his professional mask, but I saw him exchange a quick glance with Chelsea. "These documents," I said, "slowly indicate that I transfer the property voluntarily without receiving anything in return. Is that correct?" "Correct," Gerald replied. "It is a lifetime donation to your direct heir. Perfectly legal." "And what about Ethan?" Chelsea leaned forward, crossing her legs. "Dear Elelenina, let's be realistic. Your grandson attacked an adult woman. That is a serious crime. I can't just forget about it." "But you said I didn't say anything." She interrupted me with a cold smile. "You said you wanted to transfer the house. I simply agreed to come and witness this act of maternal generosity." The venom in her words was evident. I looked at Rob. Do you think your son deserves to be in a juvenile facility?" Rob finally looked up. There was something in his eyes. Shame, guilt, but he didn't say anything. He simply lowered his gaze again. "Rob has learned to trust me," Chelsea said, placing her hand on my son's arm with a possessive gesture. "He knows that I only seek the best for our family, and frankly, Ethan has been a problem since I came into your lives." "A problem," I repeated. "He is a child. He's a manipulator." Chelsea spat like you trying to separate us with lies and melodrama. Gerald cleared his throat uncomfortably, as if Chelsea were saying more than she should, but she didn't stop. "Do you have any idea how many times that brat has tried to convince Rob that I'm a bad person? How many lies he has invented about me?" "Maybe they weren't lies," I said softly. Chelsea's eyes narrowed. "What are you implying?" "Nothing. Only that a child generally tells the truth when he is scared." Chelsea let out a dry laugh. "Oh, Elelenina, always so dramatic. Just like your grandson. I guess it runs in the family, but it doesn't matter anymore, does it? Because you're going to sign those papers. You're going to stay in this apartment until nature takes its course, and Ethan will learn his lesson in a place where they teach real discipline," Chelsea Gerald said in a low voice like a warning. But she was on a roll. I could see how the power had gone to her head. "What?" she replied to Gerald. "It's the truth. This old woman is finished. Look at her. Sick, alone, defeated. She should have accepted this from the beginning. It would have saved me so much trouble." "Trouble?" I asked, finding naivety. "Yes, trouble," Chelsea replied, leaning back on the armchair like a queen on her throne. "Do you have any idea how much effort it cost me to make Rob forget about you? Every birthday, he forgot every call he didn't hear. Every visit he couldn't make. All planned, all perfectly executed." Rob looked at her surprised. "What did you say?" "Oh, please, honey." Chelsea gave him a look. "Don't act surprised. You knew perfectly well that I managed your schedule, that I decided who you spent time with and who you didn't." I thought Rob hesitated. "I thought you were just helping me get better organized." "Oh, Rob, so naive," Chelsea laughed. I was keeping you away from this woman because she was a nuisance, and it worked. Didn't it? Now you can't even stand her. I watched something break in my son's eyes like a veil falling. Gerald quickly intervened, standing up. Chelsea, I think we should focus on the documents. Sit down, Gerald. Chelsea ordered without looking at him. I'm talking. He obeyed, but I saw the nervousness on his face. He knew Chelsea was losing control. Do you know what the best part of all this is? Nina, Chelsea continued. That when you finally die and believe me with that heart of yours, it won't be long. We're going to sell this villa for $4,500,000. I already have a buyer and investor who wants to remodel the whole building. $4,500,000, I repeated. Uh-huh. And with that money plus what I've already saved from my previous investments, Rob and I are going to move to Miami. We're going to open a boutique hotel. I already have the land reserved. And Ethan, I asked. Ethan is going to a military boarding school in San Diego. Everything is already arranged. As soon as he turns 18, he'll be someone else's problem. Chelsea, stop, Rob said, standing up. What are you talking about? We never discussed any of that. Because you don't have to discuss anything, honey, Chelsea replied condescendingly. I take care of everything as always, as I took care of pushing this old woman away, of controlling your son, of planning our future. You took care of pushing my mother away. Rob's voice was trembling. Someone had to do it. She was never going to let go of you. Mothers like her are toxic. They cling to their sons like leeches. I bit my lip to keep from screaming. I needed her to keep talking. And the candlestick, I said softly. Did you take care of that too? Chelsea looked at me and smiled. That. Yes, it was clever, wasn't it? The brat was late. I was already tired of his judgmental looks, his passive-aggressive comments. So when he came in, I gave him what he deserved. A good hit with the silver candlestick that my dear dead mother-in-law gave me. Ironic, right? Rob was pale. You hit him first. Of course, but then I hit myself against the wall. A few strategic bruises, some well-acted tears, and you believed me as always. Chelsea, Gerald tried to interrupt her again. Shut up, Gerald. She exploded. This is over. The old lady is going to sign. We're going to have the house, and in a few months we'll be in Miami counting cash, just as we planned. Just as you planned with Richard, I said in a low voice. And with Franklin and with Joseph. Chelsea's face froze. Gerald jumped up. That's enough. We're leaving. Sit down, Gerald, I said. And this time my voice didn't sound tired or defeated. It sounded like the commander I was for 35 years. Because this is just beginning. I stood up and walked toward my bedroom door. I opened it. Linda came out with her laptop in her hands. Good afternoon, Linda said. Deputy Commander Linda Davis. Private investigations. Everything you have just said has been recorded in high-defin audio and video. The color drained from Chelsea's face. That's illegal. Not at all, I replied. We are in my house. I have the right to record what happens inside my property. And you have just confessed to multiple crimes. Coercion, fraud, assault on a minor conspiracy. Gerald was already at the door trying to flee, but Linda blocked his way. I wouldn't move if I were you, counselor. There are 2 detectives from criminal investigations waiting outside old friends of Commander Stone. It was true. I had called Spencer that morning. He had agreed to be nearby in case things got violent. Chelsea stood up furious. This won't hold up in any court. You set a trap for us. I set a trap that you bit with all the enthusiasm in the world, I replied coldly. Because you're arrogant. Because you believed you were invincible. Because you thought an old woman like me couldn't stand up to you. I took out my phone and dialed a number. I put it on speaker. Captain Spencer, you can come up now. We heard footsteps on the stairs. Moments later, 2 officers entered with Spencer in the lead. Commander Stone, he greeted me. Do you have what we needed? Everything, Linda replied, showing him the laptop. Full confession, threats, admission of assault on a minor conspiracy to commit fraud. Spencer looked at Chelsea and Gerald. Chelsea Brooks. Gerald Hayes, you're under arrest for the crimes of This is a setup, Chelsea screamed. Rob, say something. Defend me. We all turned to look at my son. He was sitting in the chair, his hands covering his face. His shoulders were shaking. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. It was all a lie. Everything you told me about my mother, about Ethan, about everything. Chelsea looked at him, and for the first time, I saw something close to panic in her eyes. Honey, no. I love you. Everything I did was for us. You used me, Rob said, looking up. There were tears in his eyes. You turned me against my mother. You hit my son all for money. It wasn't just for money, Chelsea insisted. I wanted a better life for us. Liar! Rob exploded, standing up. You never loved me. You only wanted my inheritance like you did with the others. The officers handcuffed Chelsea. She kept screaming, trying to reach Rob. Rob, please don't let them take me. I'm your wife. But my son just turned away. Gerald was handcuffed in silence with the resignation of someone who knows the game is over. As they were being led out of the apartment, Spencer approached me. Commander, I need you to come in tomorrow to give a formal statement. This is going to be long, but with this evidence, there's no way they're getting out. I'll be there at Gibbs when they left. Only Linda, Rob, and I remained. The silence was deafening. Rob looked at me, and for the first time in 5 years, he truly saw me. Mom, his voice broke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to hug him, but something stopped me. Years of pain, years of abandonment, years of tears. No, Rob, I said softly. Not yet. And I'm sorry doesn't fix 5 years of forgetting me. It doesn't fix you believing a stranger over your own mother. It doesn't fix you letting that woman hit your son. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. You're right. I don't deserve your forgiveness. It's not about deserving it, I replied. It's about earning it, and that's going to take time. A lot of time. I walked up to him. I placed my hand on his cheek. But you are my son. And even though you forgot me, I never forgot you. So we are going to heal this together slowly, but only if you are willing to do the real work. Anything, Mom, anything. Linda discreetly gathered her things and said goodbye. When she was gone, Rob and I stayed in my living room. The same place where years ago he played with him when he was a child. The same place where we celebrated his birthdays. The same place he had stopped visiting. Where is Ethan? He asked. Safe, with Linda and her husband. I need to see him. His voice broke. I need to ask for his forgiveness. You will, but first you need to understand something, Rob. Ethan suffered for months and you didn't see it. Not because you couldn't, but because you chose not to see it. I know. And I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. Good. Because that guilt will remind you not to fail like that ever again. We stayed in silence for a moment. Then I hugged him, and he cried in my arms like when he was a child, because at the end of the day, he was still my son. And even though he had broken my heart, I was his mother. And mothers never stop loving even when it hurts. Justice was just beginning. But the hardest part would not be seeing Chelsea pay for her crimes. It would be rebuilding a family that she had destroyed piece by piece. A week later, I was sitting in a downtown restaurant. I had chosen the place carefully, the Oakleaf Cafe, a spacious place with a patio known for its traditional food and family atmosphere. It had tables far enough apart for privacy, but it was also busy enough to have witnesses to what was about to happen. Linda was at a nearby table with her laptop and recording equipment discreetly hidden. Captain Spencer had also agreed to come off duty but present. And I had invited a notary counselor, Rodriguez, a man in his 60s who had worked with me on several cases when I was on active duty. He was someone I trusted completely, but the most important invitation I had made 3 days earlier when I called Rob. I need you to come to a meeting, I told him. Bring Chelsea. Mom, she's under house arrest. Gerald managed to get her bail while they await trial. I know. That's why I need her to come. Tell her I have a proposal, that I want to resolve this without going to trial. Are you serious? Completely. 300 p.m. Saturday, the Oakleaf Cafe. You, her, and me to talk like adults. Rob hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea, Mom. Trust me, son. Just one more time. And he agreed. Now, sitting at that round table under the shade of a cherry tree, I waited. I had ordered a pitcher of iced tea and a plate of donuts. My hands were steady, my breathing controlled. But inside, my heart was beating like a war drum. They arrived at 3:05. Rob was wearing a white shirt and jeans, deep dark circles marking his face. He had lost weight in the last week. Chelsea walked beside him with her head held high, dressed in a black business suit and dark sunglasses. She wore an electronic ankle monitor barely visible under her pants. They sat across from me. Chelsea took off her glasses and looked at me with a mixture of hatred and curiosity. "Here we are, Lelinina. You said you had a proposal." "That's right," I replied calmly. "But before we get to that, there are people I want you to meet," I signaled. Spencer approached our table, followed by Counselor Rodriguez. Chelsea immediately tensed. "What is this?" she asked. "This is a meeting to clarify things once and for all," I said. "Captain Spencer." "Counselor Rodriguez, please take a seat." They sat down. Rob looked confused from one to the other. Chelsea's fists were clenched on the table. "Chelsea Brooks," I began. Or should I say, Vanessa Jimenez Ruiz. "In the last 2 weeks, we have investigated every aspect of your life, and we have found fascinating things. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do know, but let me refresh your memory." I took a tablet from my bag. I turned it on and placed a photo on the table. It was of Richard Miller, Chelsea's first husband. Richard Miller, 60 years old when he died. Sudden heart attack. You inherited $2,800,000. That was years ago. And it was completely legal. Legal, yes, but suspicious, especially when we reviewed the medical records. Richard never had heart problems before marrying you, but during the 2 years of marriage, he visited the doctor 6 times, complaining of dizziness, nausea, weakness, symptoms, consistent with digitalis poisoning. Rob turned pale. Poisoning. Digitalis is a substance extracted from foxglove plants, Spencer explained, in small, constant doses. It causes symptoms that look like natural heart problems. In sufficiently high doses, it causes a fatal heart attack. "That's ridiculous," Chelsea said, but her voice trembled slightly. "You don't have proof of that." "You're right, we don't. Richard was cremated, but we have his daughter Patricia Miller who finally agreed to talk to us." I signaled again. Linda pressed something on her laptop. From the restaurant speakers, an audio recording began to play. It was the voice of a middle-aged woman. "I always knew Chelsea killed my father. He was a healthy man until he married her. He started getting sick, little by little. Loss of appetite, confusion, extreme fatigue. We begged him to go to the doctor to get a full checkup, but Chelsea always said he was fine, that it was just stress. One night, he simply dropped dead in the living room. She cried at the funeral, but I saw her counting the money when she sold my father's house a week later." Chelsea stood up abruptly. "That always hated me. She was jealous because her father loved me more than her." "Sit down," I said in a firm voice, "because I'm not done yet." I changed the photo on the tablet. Now, Franklin Adams appeared. Franklin Adams, 58 years old. He fell down the stairs of his house. He died 3 weeks later. $3,200,000 inheritance. The security cameras were conveniently broken that night. It was an accident, Chelsea insisted. A very convenient accident, especially considering that Franklin had updated his will a week before, leaving you everything. And especially suspicious when we spoke with his personal doctor who told us that Franklin was considering divorcing you because he had discovered suspicious transfers from his bank account. Rob looked at me. "Is that true completely pure?" Spencer replied, "We have bank statements showing transfers of $150,000 over 3 months from Franklin's account to a Cayman Islands account, an account shared by Chelsea and Gerald Hayes." Chelsea was now livid. "Those are lies." "They're not," I interrupted her. "And then there's Joseph Vega and his son Paul." I placed another photo, a young man of 26 smiling in a university graduation photo. Paul Vega, civil engineer, like his father. He disappeared 6 months after you married Joseph. He left a text message saying he was going abroad. He has never been heard from again. That boy decided to leave on his own. He didn't. I said firmly because we found Paul. The silence was absolute. Even the restaurant noise seemed to stop. What Chelsea whispered. Linda approached with another laptop. A video appeared on the screen. It was a thin young man with an unkempt beard sitting in what looked like a hospital room. I pressed play. The young man in the video began to speak. My name is Paul Vega Rodriguez. I am 30 years old. 4 years ago, Chelsea Brooks, my father's wife, drugged me with something in my coffee. When I woke up, I was in a place I didn't recognize. A man named Gerald Hayes told me that if I returned to the States or contacted my father, he would make sure my father had a fatal accident. He gave me money, a fake passport, and sent me to Guatemala. I've lived there ever since, afraid to return. But when Investigator Davis found me and told me that Chelsea was doing the same thing to another family, I knew I had to speak up. Chelsea collapsed into her chair. Her face had lost all color. No. Paul is in protective custody now. Spencer said he is going to testify. And with his testimony, plus the recordings we have of you, plus the bank statements, plus the testimonies of the previous families. Chelsea, you are going to spend the rest of your life in prison. And Gerald Hayes, I added, he already sang, by the way. When we showed him all the evidence, he made a deal with the prosecution. He confessed everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. He gave us details of every case, every scam, every crime. Rob had his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. My God! My God! Chelsea looked at me with pure hatred. You were always a damn meddler. No, I replied. I am a mother protecting her family, and I am a former commander who knows how to recognize a criminal when I see one. I stood up. Counselor Rodriguez took some documents from his briefcase. The documents you signed at my house are completely void, by the way. The coercion clause automatically invalidates them. My property is still mine, and Ethan is under my full legal custody now. Rob signed the papers yesterday. I looked at my son. He nodded with tears in his eyes. Chelsea Brooks. Spencer said, standing up, You are formally charged with fraud, extortion, attempted murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. Your house arrest has been revoked. Officers, please. 2 police officers who had been waiting nearby approached. Chelsea tried to resist as they put the handcuffs on her. Rob, help me. Tell them this is a mistake. Rob looked at her. Tears rolled down his face, but when he spoke, his voice was firm. I can't help you, Chelsea, because all of this is true and I was too blind to see it. As they led her away, Chelsea screamed, cursed, threatened, but no one was listening to her anymore. The other diners in the restaurant watched the scene with a mixture of shock and curiosity. When the restaurant finally returned to relative silence, Rob looked at me. Why did you do it here? Why not just at the precinct? Because you needed to see it, son. You needed to see who she really was, with witnesses, with evidence, without a shadow of a doubt. You needed your last image of her not to be the crying victim who says you are cruel. You needed to see the real Chelsea, a cornered criminal who will finally pay for her crimes. Rob nodded slowly. And now what? Now comes the hard part, I said, sitting down again. Rebuilding our family, healing the wounds, recovering the lost time. Do you think it's possible? I don't know, but we are going to try because despite everything, you are still my son and Ethan deserves to have his father back. Spencer and Counselor Rodriguez said goodbye discreetly. Linda packed up her equipment and left too, not without giving me a knowing wink. Rob and I were left alone at that table under the cherry tree, with a half-drunk picture of iced tea and donuts no one had touched. Can I see Ethan today? Rob asked. If he wants to see you, yes. And if he doesn't want to, then you'll wait. And you'll keep waiting until he's ready. Because that's what parents do, Rob. They wait. They fight. They don't give up. Like you never gave up on me. Like I never gave up on you. I paid the bill and we walked out of the restaurant together. The afternoon sun painted the sky orange and pink. The city buzzed with its usual noise, horned street vendors' music coming from a nearby store. It was an ordinary day for everyone else. But for us, it was the first day of the rest of our lives. The first day without Chelsea poisoning everything around her. The first day of a possible healing. And although the path would be long and painful, at least now we could walk it together. Chelsea would face justice, but the real battle was just beginning, proving to Ethan that we could be a family again. And that would require something more than evidence and arrests. It would require love, patience, and time. 3 months after the arrest, I was sitting in the courtroom of the Supreme Court building. The place smelled of old wood and ancient papers. The polished wooden benches were full of people, journalists who had followed the case, onlookers, families of Chelsea's previous victims. Ethan was sitting to my right in a suit we had bought especially for this occasion. To my left, Rob. In the preceding weeks, father and son had begun a slow process of reconciliation. It wasn't easy. There were tears, uncomfortable silences, difficult conversations, but they were trying, and that was all that mattered. Linda was a few rows back next to Spencer. Both had worked tirelessly to build the case against Chelsea and Gerald. And today, finally the sentence would be handed down. The side door opened. 2 guards entered escorting Chelsea. Nothing remained of the elegant, confident woman I had known years ago. She wore the orange prison uniform, her hair unkempt, and pulled back in a sloppy ponytail with no makeup. She had lost weight. She had deep circles under her eyes. But what struck me most was her gaze. There was no more arrogance, only resentment and defeat. Behind her entered Gerald Hayes, also in a prison uniform. He kept his gaze lowered as if the weight of his crimes had finally broken him. "All rise," the clear announced. Presiding over this hearing, the Honorable Judge Martha Sullivan. We stood up. The judge entered. A woman about 55 years old with short gray hair and an expression that revealed nothing. She sat on her bench and motioned for us to do the same. "Good morning," she began. "We are here to sentence the state versus Vanessa Jimenez Ruiz, also known as Chelsea Brooks and Gerald Hayes. The defendants have been found guilty by a jury of their peers of the following crimes: aggravated fraud, extortion, attempted murder, kidnapping, criminal association, and conspiracy to commit murder." The judge's voice resonated through the room. Every word was like a hammer blow. "Before proceeding with the sentence, does any of the victims wish to make a statement?" The prosecutor looked at me. I nodded and stood up. I had prepared this for weeks. I had written and rewritten my words, but when I finally spoke, it was from the heart. "Your Honor, my name is Nina Stone. I was a commander in criminal investigations for 35 years. In that time, I saw many criminals, but none like Vanessa Jimenez." I looked directly at Chelsea. She held my gaze with pure hatred. She did not destroy only properties or bank accounts. She destroyed families. She destroyed the trust between fathers and sons. She manipulated. She lied. And when her lies were not enough, she resorted to violence. My grandson has a permanent scar on his eyebrow because of her. My son lost 5 years of relationship with me because of her, and other families lost much more. Patricia Miller was sitting in the front row. She nodded with tears in her eyes. But beyond the material or physical damage, Chelsea is dangerous because she completely lacks empathy. She has no remorse. Even now, even after being exposed, she has not shown a single ounce of repentance. And that, Your Honor, is what makes her truly dangerous. I sat down. The judge nodded. Anyone else? Paul Vega stood up. It was the first time I had seen him in person. He looked healthier than in the video, but there were still shadows in his eyes. "Your Honor, Vanessa Jimenez stole 4 years of my life. She took me away from my father, who died without ever seeing me again. He died thinking I had abandoned him. I never got to tell him the truth. I never got to say goodbye. And that is something I will carry for the rest of my life." His voice broke. He quickly sat down, covering his face with his hands. Patricia Miller also spoke, recounting how Chelsea had destroyed her father's memory. There were 2 more people, relatives of Franklin Adams, who spoke of the pain and confusion caused by his death. Finally, the judge looked at Chelsea. "Does the defendant wish to say anything before the sentence is delivered?" Chelsea slowly stood up. For a moment, I thought she was going to say something genuine, something human, But when she spoke, it was with the same coldness as always. All of this is a farce. I am the victim of a conspiracy by resentful people who cannot accept that their relatives loved me more than them. I did nothing wrong, and someday the truth will come out. She sat down. The judge looked at her with an expression that could have frozen hell. Miss Jimenez, in my 25 years as a judge, I have seen many criminals. Some show repentance. Others at least have the decency to remain silent. But you continue to believe you are the victim. And that tells me you have learned absolutely nothing. The judge opened a folder and began to read. Vanessa Jimenez Ruiz, for the crimes of aggravated fraud in 3 cases, is sentenced to 12 years in prison. For aggravated extortion, an additional 6 years. For attempted murder in the case of Richard Miller, based on circumstantial but substantial evidence, 15 years for kidnapping in the case of Paul Vega, 20 years for criminal association, 5 years. The sentences will be served consecutively, not concurrently. Total 58 years in prison. A murmur went through the room. Chelsea had turned pale. In addition, she is ordered to pay full restitution to all victims. All assets acquired through fraud will be confiscated and returned to their rightful owners or heirs. The judge looked at Gerald. Gerald Hayes, by virtue of his cooperation with the prosecution and his complete confession. And considering that his involvement was mainly as a legal facilitator without directly engaging in violent acts, is sentenced to 25 years in prison. His license to practice law is permanently revoked. He must also pay full restitution. Gerald nodded without expression. He had accepted his fate weeks ago. This court is adjourned. The final gavel echoed in the room. The guards led Chelsea and Gerald away. She turned around one last time, looking for Rob with her eyes. But my son wasn't even looking at her. He had his arm around Ethan, hugging him. Outside the courthouse, journalists surrounded us. I made a brief statement that I had prepared with Linda. Justice has been served today not only for my family, but for all the families that Vanessa Jimenez destroyed. I hope this sentence sends a clear message. No one is above the law, and manipulation, fraud, and violence always have consequences. I didn't answer questions. I simply walked away with Ethan and Rob. That night in my apartment, the 3 of us ate dinner together. I had prepared meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and fresh biscuits. Ethan ate with appetite for the first time in months. Rob helped serve the water, clear the plates, small gestures that showed he was trying to be part of the family again. "How do you feel, son?" I asked Ethan after dinner as we washed the dishes together. "Relieved," he replied, but also sad. Sad? Why? Because my dad lost years with that woman. Because you suffered. Because we could have been happy all this time and we weren't. The past cannot be changed, Ethan. We can only learn from it and build something better moving forward. Do you think Dad and I can be like before? No, you won't be like before. You're going to be something different, and if you do it right, it will be something better. Rob appeared in the kitchen doorway. Ethan, can I talk to you for a moment? Ethan looked at me. I nodded. They went out onto the balcony together. Through the window, I watched them talk. I saw Rob cry and how Ethan hugged him. I saw how finally, after so much pain, they were beginning to heal. 2 weeks later, Rob did something I didn't expect. He arrived at my apartment one Saturday morning with papers in his hand. "Mom, I want you to see this." They were legal documents. I read them carefully. "Are you sure about this?" "Completely sure." He had put the house where he lived with Chelsea up for sale. All the money from the sale would be divided into 3 parts. One for me, one for Ethan, and one for a compensation fund for the families of Chelsea's victims. "That house is full of bad memories," he said. "Every room reminds me how blind I was. I can't live there anymore. I'm going to look for a smaller apartment closer to here so I can be near you all. And Ethan will continue to live with you while he finishes high school if you agree. But I'm going to be present. I'll take him to school, go to his soccer games, help him with his homework. I'm going to be the father I should have been all along." I hugged him. My son finally back. A month later, I received a letter. It was from the prison. The sender was Vanessa Jimenez. I hesitated to open it. Linda, who was visiting me that day, said, "You don't have to read it if you don't want to, Commander." But something made me open it anyway. The letter was brief. Alelanina, you won. Congratulations. You destroyed my life just as I tried to destroy yours. I guess that makes you feel powerful. But I want you to know something. I don't regret anything. Every decision I made was because this world doesn't give anything to women like me. I had to take what I wanted, and I would do it again. You're gonna die someday, old lady. And when you do, I'll still be here remembering how I defeated you for 5 years, how I pushed your son away from you, how I made him doubt you. Those 5 years are mine, and no one can take them from me. May you rot, Vanessa. Linda read the letter over my shoulder. She's a psychopath until the very end. Yes, I replied. She is. But instead of getting angry, I felt something different. Pity. Pity for a woman so broken inside that she never knew real love, who only understood the world in terms of winning and losing, taking and destroying. I tore the letter into pieces and threw it in the trash. She can keep those 5 years, I told Linda, because I have the rest of my life with my family, and that's something all her hatred can never touch. That night, Rob, Ethan, and I ate dinner together again. This time, Ethan brought his guitar and played songs he had learned at school. Rob and I sang off-key, laughing at ourselves. At one point, while Ethan played a song his mother had taught him, I looked around my small living room. The old furniture, the photos on the walls, the smell of coffee and cinnamon, and I realized something. Chelsea never had real power over me. Because power is not in money or in property or in manipulating others. Power is in the love you give and the roots you plant in the family you build with patience and dedication. Chelsea could rot in her cell clinging to those 5 years she stole from me. Because I had something she would never have: a family that loved me, a grandson who respected me, a son who had finally come home. And that, without a doubt, was the true victory. But the story does not end with revenge or punishment. It ends with something much more powerful. Forgiveness, reconstruction, and proof that love can always heal even the deepest wounds. Part 10. The Legacy of a Commander. 6 months after the sentencing, I woke up with the sun streaming through my bedroom window. It was a Saturday in May, and the city smelled of recent rain and bougainvillea flowers. I stayed in bed for a moment, listening to the sounds of my apartment. From the kitchen came the clatter of dishes. Someone was making breakfast. I heard laughter, a deep voice, and a younger one exchanging jokes. I smiled. I slowly got up, putting on my worn robe and slippers. When I reached the kitchen, I found a scene that a year ago would have seemed impossible. Rob was at the stove making scrambled eggs. Ethan was setting the table, humming a song that was playing on the radio. They had made black coffee donuts and cut fruit. "Good morning, Grandma," Ethan said when he saw me. "Happy birthday." I had completely forgotten. 69 years, a whole life. "Oh, my boys, you didn't have to do this." "Of course we did," Rob said, turning to me with a smile. "It's your special day." We ate breakfast together at the small dining table. Ethan told me about his final math exam, which he had passed with a 9. Rob talked about his new job at a smaller construction company where the atmosphere was better and the hours more reasonable. "I don't want to lose any more time," Rob said, looking into my eyes. "Money can wait. You can't." After breakfast, Ethan pulled out a package wrapped in green paper. "This is from both of us." I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo album, but they weren't old photos. They were new photos from the last 6 months. Ethan playing soccer with Rob watching from the stands. The 3 of us in the mall eating ice cream. A picture of Rob and me holding hands in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Ethan hugging me after his high school graduation. A photo of the 3 of us planting a tree in the community garden near my house. A cherry tree. Tears filled my eyes as I turned the pages. "Do you like it?" Ethan asked. "It's perfect, my boy. Perfect." On the last page was a photo of the 3 of us sitting on my sofa, smiling at the camera. And underneath, written in Rob's handwriting, "Family isn't just the blood you share. It's the love you choose to give every day. Thank you, Mom, for never giving up on us. We love you." I couldn't stop crying. Rob hugged me from one side, Ethan from the other. And in that moment, in that small kitchen of a modest apartment in Greenwich Village, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. "I have something to tell you," Rob said, after a moment pulling away slightly. "I've been going to therapy twice a week for the last 4 months." I looked at him surprised. "You hadn't told me." "I wanted to be sure it was working before I told you. I needed to understand why I was so blind with Chelsea, why I let her manipulate me so easily. And what did you discover that I never truly processed the death of Ethan's mom? That I felt guilty for being happy without her. And when Chelsea arrived, I filled that void with the first thing I found, regardless of whether it was real or not. And in the process, I hurt the people who truly loved me." "Dad," Ethan said softly, "we already talked about this. I already forgave you." "I know, son, but I'm still learning to forgive myself." "That takes time," I said. "But the fact that you're doing the work, that you're facing your mistakes, is already a huge step." Rob nodded. "The therapist helped me understand something else. He told me that you, Mom, were an example of strength all my life. And maybe that's why I never told you when I was suffering, because I thought I had to be as strong as you." Son, strength doesn't mean not asking for help. It means knowing when you need support and having the courage to ask for it. I know that now. And that's why I also want you to know something. I'm proud of you. I always was, but I never told you enough. Those words, so simple, touched me deeper than anything. I'm proud of you too, Rob, of the man you are today. Of the father you are becoming again. We spent the rest of the day together. We went for a walk in Central Park. Ethan ran ahead, taking photos with his phone. Rob and I walked slowly, enjoying the sun and the breeze. "Mom, are you ever going to tell me about your work on the police force?" Rob asked suddenly. "I grew up seeing you were a commander, but you never talked about it at home. I never wanted to bring that darkness into our home," I replied. "I saw very difficult things, very bad people. And when I came home, I just wanted to be your mom, not Commander Stone. But that part of you is important too. It's also part of what makes you you." We sat on a bench under a centenary oak tree. "What do you want to know?" "What was the hardest case you solved?" I thought for a moment. "There was one. An 8-year-old girl disappeared from her school. Everyone thought she was dead, but I kept looking. For 3 weeks, I practically didn't sleep. I checked cameras, interrogated hundreds of people, followed every lead, no matter how small. And finally, we found her alive. Scared, but alive. She was hidden in a neighbor's basement, and the neighbor, he's serving a life sentence. But that girl, she grew up, studied medicine, and is now a pediatrician. She sends me a card every Christmas. She says I saved her life, but actually she gave meaning to mine." "That's why you were so tenacious with Chelsea," Rob said. "Because you know how to investigate, how to not give up." "Yes, but also because it was my family. And for my family, I will always fight." Ethan came running back excited. "Grandma, Dad, there's a music festival over there. Can we go?" "Let's go," I said, standing up. We went to the festival. It was a Mother's Day celebration with local music, food stalls, and crafts. We ate street corn, drank lemonade, and danced to the rhythm of a local band playing old songs. At one point, while Ethan was buying cotton candy, Rob took my hands and made me dance to Amazing Grace. I laughed like I hadn't laughed in years. People around us looked and smiled. "This," Rob said, spinning me clumsily. "This is what we should have been doing all along, laughing together, enjoying together. It's never too late to start, son." When we returned home at dusk, we were tired but happy. Ethan went to his room to do homework. Rob and I stayed in the living room drinking chamomile tea. "Mom, there's something else I want to tell you." "Tell me." "I'm thinking of starting to date someone, a coworker. Her name is Alelina. She's an architect. She has a 12-year-old daughter." My first instinct was to tense up, but I took a deep breath. "What is she like?" "Kind. Genuine, divorced 3 years ago. She has no interest in my money because she earns more than me." He smiled. "And most importantly, when I told her what happened with Chelsea about my mistakes, she didn't run away. She listened to me. And she told me that everyone deserves a second chance if they are willing to do the work. She sounds like a smart woman." "She is, and I would like you to meet her, but Only if you are ready. I won't pressure you. Does Ethan know her? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first because after what happened, I need to do things right. I need us all to be on the same page. I placed my hand on his. Son, you deserve to be happy. You deserve love. Just take your time. Get to know her well. And when you're sure, when you know it's real, then introduce us. Thank you, Mom. But, Rob, one thing. Yes, if ever in any future relationship you feel someone is pulling you away from your family, from Ethan, from me, promise me you will stop it immediately. I promise you I will never let anyone separate me from you again. That night before sleeping, I went out onto the balcony. The city glowed under the nightlights. I could hear the murmur of traffic, the voices of neighbors. Distant music from some party. I thought about the path we had traveled, the pain, the tears, the fights, Chelsea and her wickedness, the lost years, the wounds, guises that were still healing. But I also thought about what we had gained. The shared dinners, the laughter, the hugs, the second chances. Ethan came out onto the balcony, a blanket over his shoulders. Can't sleep, Grandma. I was just thinking about that it was worth it. Every tear, every fight, every difficult moment. It was worth it to get to this moment. Ethan walked closer and hugged me. Grandma, there's something I've never told you. When I was at my worst with Chelsea, when I felt like no one believed me, I held on to one thought, that you would never abandon me, that no matter what, you would always be on my side. And I always will be my boy until my last breath. That's why I want to be like you when I grow up. Strong, brave, someone who fights for the people they love. You already are all of that. Ethan, you already are. Do you know what I'm going to study? What son law? I want to be a lawyer, but not like Gerald. I want to defend families like ours, children. No one believes people who need someone to fight for them. Tears rolled down my cheeks. Your mother would be so proud of you. And you make me proud too, Grandma, because you taught me that giving up is never an option. We stayed there embracing under the stars on that small balcony of a modest apartment in New York City. And at that moment, I understood something profound. Wealth is not measured in property or bank accounts. It is measured in shared moments in hands that hold in stories that are told from generation to generation. Chelsea had spent her life accumulating money that never brought her happiness, dying alone in a cell with no one who truly loved her. I, on the other hand, had a grandson who wanted to be like me, a son who had come home an imperfect but real family. And that was all the treasure I needed. 2 years later, I was sitting in the community garden under the cherry tree we had planted. It was spring, and the tree had bloomed for the first time. Pink flowers covered the branches, swaying in the gentle breeze. Ethan was in his first year of law at Georgetown University. Rob had married Elena 6 months earlier in a small, intimate ceremony. I had walked him down the aisle, and when he asked if I approved of the marriage, I said, Son, you are already a man. You no longer need my approval, but you have my blessing. Because I see how Elena looks at you, and I see how you look at her, and that is real love. They now lived nearby, just 10 minutes from my apartment. I saw them several times a week. Elena's daughter Sophia had become very close to Ethan. The 4 of them often came to dinner with me on Sundays. It was a new family, different, but beautiful in its imperfection. Linda sat next to me on the garden bench. What are you thinking about, Commander, that life comes full circle and the scars it leaves make us stronger? Do you ever regret how you handled the whole situation with Chelsea? No. I did what I had to do to protect my family, and I would do it again without hesitation. Do you know that Paul Vega just got married? He sent me an invitation. He was finally able to rebuild his life. I'm glad. He deserves to be happy after everything he went through. Linda took out her phone and showed me a photo. It was of Paul's wedding. He looked radiant, surrounded by family and friends. And this will also interest you. Patricia Miller opened a foundation to help victims of family fraud. It's named after you, Commander. The Elena Stone Foundation for Family Protection. Why did she do that? Because you restored her faith in justice. Because you proved that the truth always wins if you fight hard enough for it. I didn't know what to say. I could only smile. Ethan came running to the garden, a letter in his hand. Grandma, look at this. It was a letter from the university. He had been selected for a human rights exchange program. I'm so proud of you, my son. None of this would have been possible without you. You taught me that justice is worth fighting for. Rob and Alelena arrived shortly after with a picnic basket. We had a picnic under the cherry tree. We laughed, ate, and told stories. At one point, while everyone was talking animatedly, I looked around at my family, at the people I had fought so hard to protect and bring together. And I thought about Chelsea serving her 58-year sentence in a cold cell, alone, bitter with no one to visit her. I felt no joy in her suffering. I only felt pity because she never understood something fundamental. The true power is not in how much you can take from others. It is in how much you are willing to give for love. And I had given everything. My time, my energy, my tears, my heart. But in return, I had received something that no money can buy. A family that loved me, a legacy of justice, and the certainty that when my last day came, I would not die alone or forgotten. I would die surrounded by love. And that love would continue to live in Ethan and Rob in the generations to come. Because that is the true legacy of a mother, of a grandmother, of a woman who refused to surrender. Not the property she leaves behind, but the love she sowed. And that love, planted with patience and watered with tears, had finally bloomed like the cherry tree under which we now rested. Beautiful, strong, eternal. End. If this story touched your heart, if you have ever had to fight for your family or defend those you love, leave me a comment telling me where you are watching from, what country, what city. I would love to know that these words reached you wherever you are. And remember, family is not always perfect. Sometimes it is broken. Sometimes it hurts. But if there is true love, there is always hope of healing. Like this video if you believe in second chances. Subscribe for more stories that will make you feel, think, and believe in justice. Because true wealth is not in what you possess, but in what you refuse to lose.